What can be spared? Balthazar hardly even knew why he was bothering to pick his way around the puddles. His boots were saturated, every footstep a waterlogged squelch. His repulsive Hessian habit was spattered to the waist with filth. The pilgrim's garment was, like so much that the church produced, both functionally useless and aesthetically bankrupt, with the added indignity of making him appear to be fundamentally the same as everyone else, a misapprehension he had been striving to correct since a child. When he thought of his roomful of marvellous vestments, the pentagrams picked out in thread of precious metals, oh, the apron with all the little mirrors for the repulsion of demonic powers, he felt moved to weep, though ever since his conviction for the crimes of creativity, free thinking, and increasing the sum total of human knowledge, he had felt moved to weep on an almost permanent basis. No one would have noticed, had he wept, of course. Firstly, because the switchback tracks their so-called blessed company climbed into the mountains were littered with treacherous drops and required one's constant attention. Secondly, because his enforced companions from the Chapel of the Holy Expediency were a cabal of self-centered, misanthropic monsters who cared for no one's comfort but their own. And thirdly, because his tears would have been instantly obliterated by the thin rain that had been sprinkling the pilgrim's gloomy procession for days, turning the already uncertain footing to claggy glue. He had never been one for walking, opting mainly for a sedan chair if he really had to leave the house. Prayer had never ranked among his leading interests either. He believed in God, of course, but as a magician they had never particularly got on. He believed in goats, but desired no interaction with them. It was fair to say, therefore, he found a pilgrimage a bit of a slog. In fact, once one had factored in the singing, the clapping, the mud, the blisters, the overweening smugness, the overwhelming hypocrisy, the mud, the rain, the interminable preaching, the atrocious mixture of hymns and crusading marches, the abhorrent slop served from the common cauldron, the mud, the constantly worrisome, frequently offensive, and occasionally repugnant company, and, of course, always the mud. The whole business was more a peregrination to hell than to heaven. The humiliation that he, Balthazar Sham-Ivam Draxi, luminary of the necromantic community, should find himself wedged into this procession of imbecility, this unholy trudge from nowhere to nowhere, this unmerry march to physical discomfort, spiritual disappointment, and intellectual impoverishment. He caught the mournful clangor of a bell up ahead, its music muffled by the rain. A death knell for his deceased hopes and dreams, perhaps. "Let's hurry it up," grunted Jacob of Thorn, frowning back, with his sparse grey hair stuck to his scarred grey pickaxe of a head, doggedly determined to wring the maximum pain from every step so he could manfully conquer it. "You hurry it up, you deathless dunce," muttered Balthazar, though obviously not until the knight had limped well out of earshot. "You may wish to speak even more softly," murmured Baron Rickard, leaning close enough that Balthazar could feel the chill of his breath even in the mountain air. "His pet elf is likely somewhere among us. One of her ears may be clipped, but she misses nothing." "Sage advice," murmured Balthazar, glancing suspiciously about. The vampire appeared a shade younger and more pleased with himself every day, and had the aspect now of a hale and handsome aristocrat in his early 60s, the once dangling wattles of skin tightened around a noble jawline, dark hairs beginning to show in the silver of his beard. "You have plainly been indulging your particular appetites." The Baron flashed the sorry-not-sorry smirk of a spoiled heir caught diddling the maid. "Is it so obvious?" I have noted telltale pinpricks on the necks of several members of the company, and people do not, as a rule, get younger." "Well," Ricard dropped his voice to an intimate purr, "I am a vampire. Drinking blood does rather come with the territory, but I am very gentle when I dine these days, I assure you." Merely the slightest hint of fang showed in his easy smile. "I only take what can be spared." The self-serving justification of every burglar, slaver, racketeer, and tyrant throughout history. Role models for the ages indeed. I would hardly have expected a leading member of your profession to object to a little— The vampire glanced back towards the file of pilgrims labouring up the steep path below them. "Judicious exploitation of the cattle. As long as I notice no fang-holes about my own throat, why would I? Oh, I would never feed on someone to whom I had been formally introduced without express permission. It would be like eating a pet. Once they have a name, it feels—" The Baron gave a fastidious shudder. "So crass." "Still with us, then?" Balthazar frowned up to see Baptiste sitting above him on a crumbling wall overlooking the path, one leg gently swinging. She had cinched in her pilgrim's habit with a worn hunter's belt cocked at a slant, and added brass-buckled knee boots, a chain sporting holy circles of several different materials, and a hat improvised from a folded scrap of waxed canvas. The effect should by all rights have been absurd, but to his great irritation she looked sleek as a witch's cat. She never appeared to exert any effort, but nonetheless arrived everywhere first, and always with that damned supercilious smirk that felt like a living reminder of all his recent humiliations. "Were you hoping I had slipped and plunged to my death?" he grumbled. "A girl can dream." She reached behind her head, tipped her hat forwards with one finger, and directed a stream of water from the brim to spatter down the front of his habit. Balthazar ground his teeth as he fumbled for a rejoinder. Her brazen boasting, her limitless self-aggrandisement, her tedious harping on her matchless experience. Once he was free of this damned binding, he would give her an experience she would not soon forget. She would experience his ruthless retribution, a stern chastisement, a veritable spanking, bent helpless across his knee. And she would look back over her shoulder, still with that smirk most likely, and beg for more, and they would nip and bite and scratch at one another like witches' cats coupling, and she would whisper his name, pronounced correctly, her breath hot on his ear, and— "Wait," he muttered. "What?" She looked suspicious. "What do you mean, what?" "What do you mean, what?" he demanded, far too loud, as if one could turn abject drivel into triumphant repartee by volume alone, then strode on up the path towards the latest false summit before Baptiste could reply, hoping no one noticed the stiffness of his gait or the sudden colour in his cheek. He would keep his silence. Yes, he would not take the bait. This was not retreat, it was victory through towering dignity. No matter the provocation, Balthazar Sham Ivan Draxi always took the high road, though it seemed rarely to lead him anywhere that anyone would want to go. "Another bloody shrine?" he groaned. This one, wedged into the sodden saddle at the highest point of the pass, consisted of a squat bell tower beside a cave, likely used as a temple by worshippers of other gods, long predating the Saviour's teachings. Say what you like about the saved, they were masters of setting up in other people's houses and pretending they were the architect. Lying was a sin, apparently, unless you did it outrageously and persistently enough, in which case it qualified as scripture. "Another bloody shrine," echoed the Baron, a picture of suave disdain. "I would pray for God to have mercy upon us, but I fear he takes little note of the entreaties of vampires." "I fear he is equally deaf to necromancers," grunted Balthazar. "I fear he is equally deaf to everyone. Will you be queuing up to view the relics?" They laughed together. The world was, it hardly needed to be said, divided into enemies and those that could be made use of. The Baron might well have been the most dangerous monster in this monstrous company, but if Balthazar had learned one thing during his storied career in the magical sciences, it was that the worst monsters often made the best allies. "Once the discerning spectator has viewed one jar of holy dust," he observed, "he finds little to entrance him in another dozen." "And yet I note you have not abandoned our blessed company. Do I take it you have given up on breaking Her Holiness's binding?" "Given up?" Balthazar glared down his nose at the vampire. "Giving up is not something I do." And he worked his wrist deeper into his ragged sleeve, where that infernal red streak could no longer offend his senses. "Though I will concede, reluctantly, as far as the power of Her Infant Holiness's binding is concerned, I may have made a minor misjudgment." "I believe humility stands among the 12 virtues." Baron Rickard pressed pious hands to his heart. "Perhaps our pilgrimage is already working wonders upon your immortal soul." "I will overcome this enchantment, believe me." Balthazar glanced carefully about, but no one was listening. They never were lately. "I merely need the correct tools, appropriate books, charts, reagents, habiliments, conjurer's circles, and so on. Possibly a staff." "Robes, rods, magic rings?" The Baron glanced significantly towards the many walking sticks, holy symbols, and sackcloth habits to be seen among the crowd of pilgrims. "Well, you're the wizard." "Magician." "But one is forced to wonder if there is quite so much water between magic and religion as its practitioners would like one to believe." "The difference," snapped Balthazar, "is that magic works." "Yet here we have one of Europe's foremost necromancers obliged by the Pope's binding to attend a pilgrimage." The vampire strolled on towards the cave, where the queue of faithful was beginning to diminish. "I may give the relics a passing glance, after all." Like a treat. Alex set the lantern on a tree stump and unfolded the cloth beside it and pushed the cheese and the bread around a bit till it looked pretty. Pathetic, really. It was only cheese and bread, but she'd a lot of practice at making a meagre meal feel like a treat. Her Holiness had said they should be nice, after all, and this seemed a nice thing to do. Sort of thing she'd want someone to do for her if she'd been left out in the woods on her own. Sort of thing no one ever did do for her. "Boo!" Alex jumped, even though she'd been expecting it. Because she'd been expecting it, maybe. "Every goddamn time," she muttered, one hand to her pounding heart. Sonny padded past her to the stump. Padded was overstating it. A cat in fleece slippers would have made a din by comparison. "How'd you do it?" asked Alex. "I make a sudden noise in your ear. Not the boo, the vanishing. I hold my breath and do it." Sonny squatted beside the stump, pushing back her hood, and gave the food a look over. "A feast. It's bread and cheese." Sonny made a circle with her long fingers in the air above it and peered through. "But look how it's arranged." "Just how it happened." Sonny glanced over, and Alex got that nervous flutter she always did when the elf looked her right in the eye. "Then I like how it happened." And she picked up the cheese and nibbled it between her front teeth. Elves in stained-glass windows were always armed with terrifying fangs, often being sunk into some saint or other. But Sonny's didn't really look like teeth that had rend the flesh from the bones of mankind. There might even been an oddly childlike little gap between the front two. "How is it?" asked Alex.
"Cheesy."
"Is that bad?"
"In many things it would be, but in cheese it's essential."
Alex watched her eat. There was something fascinating in how she moved, so neat and quick. Maybe it was rude to stare, but Alex's manners had never been the best, and probably Sonny was used to folk staring. Had a starring role in a freak show, hadn't she? "Balthazar didn't like it," said Alex, once the silence started to feel like a weight. "Thought it was beneath him, I guess. He thinks most things are beneath him." Certainly he thought Alex was beneath him. He looked at her like she was a piece of shit. But then, she was a piece of shit, ask anyone.
"He'll get less picky,"
said Sonny. "Can't see it."
"Then he'll get more hungry."
"I reckon he's up to something."
"Everyone's up to something."
"He's teaching me the history of Troy." Sonny looked up. Again that little flutter.
"How did such a thing come to pass?"
"I asked about the place, and Baptiste offered to tell me, and Balthazar said he couldn't stand to hear it done so badly. He knows all about the Empire of the East, he says. He knows all about everything, he says. He speaks 12 languages, he says."
"That's good."
"Is it?"
"You can learn 12 ways to tell him to fuck himself."
Alex spluttered laughter, then couldn't tell from Sonny's face whether it was meant to be a joke, and tailed off. "Jacob thinks I should know about Troy, at least a bit, if I'm going to—"
"Sit in the serpent throne?"
That was right near the top of a growing list of things Alex didn't want to think about, along with the smell of cooking flesh in the inn, the way the blood welled from the hole in that guard's belly, the sound Marcian made when the wolf's jaws closed around his head. The wind came up chill, and Alex folded her arms around herself. She missed Duke Michael. She hardly knew the man, and he was the best friend she had. He'd made her feel like she might not be a piece of shit, or might not always be one, which was a nice thought to entertain, however wrong it was.
"Maybe you should go back to the others,"
said Sonny. Alex stood up, wiping her eyes, pretending something had blown into them. "I'm annoying you."
"No, thought I was annoying you."
Sonny broke off a piece of bread and held it out.
"Stay."
"Thanks." Alex took the bread and dropped back down on the stump. "All Vega and the Baron do is squabble."
"Sounds like them."
"Baptiste and Balthazar try to outboast each other, while Jacob frowns into the dark."
"Jacob's a good man."
"Is he?"
"I've known some very awful men, so probably I'm a bad judge, but I expect Jacob would die for you, if he could."
That didn't make Alex feel any better. "I'm hoping no one else will have to die on this trip," she said, then added in a whisper, "especially me."
"Hope can't hurt."
"But it can't help either." Sonny just raised her white brows and nibbled more cheese with her strangely ordinary, gappy front teeth. "The camp's mostly empty anyway," said Alex. "Everyone went for evening prayers at some monastery. Holiest place in Romana, they're saying. They've a list of all the miracles that happened there pinned up on a big board outside."
"Anything juicy?"
Alex shrugged. "Couldn't say. Can't read. But I can count, and there's a lot of 'em. They've got St. Bartholomew's foot there, apparently, the foot he first stepped into the holy city with. He was declared a heretic, apparently, but returned to the grace of the Saviour. So there's hope for everyone, apparently."
"Even elves?"
"Well, no, probably not for them. Brother Diaz says elves don't have souls, so the church is really not a fan of elves, in my experience."
"Nor in mine,"
said Sonny.
"You didn't want to see it?"
"What, the foot?" Alex shrugged. "One dead man's foot is much like another, I expect, and you have to pay."
Just to see it?
For extra, you can touch its case, and for even more extra, you can drink from some holy spring, burst forth from the ground the foot touched. Sonny's smooth forehead crinkled a little.
You pay to drink water that's had a dead man's foot in it?
And they give you a badge to wear.
Why?
Alex shrugged again. Tell everyone you're holier than average, I guess. Stick some saint's name on it and pilgrims will pay for fucking anything. Hell of a racket if you can find a way in. Get a good relic signed off by the papal inspectors and the punters throw money at you.
You'd like that?
Alex shrugged one more time. Guess there's worse they could throw. The silence settled. An owl tooted, the gabble of the camp away in the night. The wind blew up again and shook the leaves. Don't you get lonely? Asked Alex. Out here, on your own? Sonny looked up at the sky, a tear in the clouds where the stars were showing.
Why would I?
I don't like people much, and they certainly don't like me much, but I sort of need 'em.
Who would I miss?
Alex thought through their group, the prissy priest, the pompous magician, the nitpicking vampire, the brooding knight, the tattooed woman who might at any moment become a massacre. Halfway down the list, her shrug was right up around her ears. Me?
But you're here.
Alex hunched into her pilgrim's habit. It wasn't warm and it wasn't comfortable, but she'd hunched into worse. I'm so glad we have these talks, she said. Clean, not clean. This way, said Viga, striding on towards the river. Right, squeaked Alex, hurrying to catch up. She had to take 3 steps for every 2 of Viga's, partly because she was a stringy little scrap, and partly because she treated every step like it was saying sorry for something. Viga did not say sorry, ever. Never had, even before the bite. She liked to walk, feel the mud press the soles of her feet like a handshake. Jacob had said something about incognito, and she got the feeling that was someone stealthy, but she'd never heard of him. Sneaking about was well enough for Sonny, who was built like a length of wire, and well enough for Baptiste, who could smirk her way through a keyhole, and well enough even for Alex, who didn't look like anyone in particular, so you almost missed her when she was right in front of you. But it wasn't going to work for Viga. Disguises weren't made in her size. So she pushed her hood back and shook her hair out and stood her full height. Some fucker wanted her to shrink. They could try and make her. See how that turned out. People stared, of course. That's a very big woman, they were probably thinking, and they were right. So? Why be ashamed, her mother always said. If people don't like you, it's their problem. Don't make yourself suffer for it. Fuck 'em, she'd always said. You'll find enough folk want you to suffer. There's no need to help the bastards. They never got Viga's mother to drop her eyes, and Odin's beard they'd tried. So Viga didn't drop hers either. Not for anyone. Fuck 'em, she said. Who? Asked Alex. Oh, Viga had forgotten she was there. Everyone. Fuck 'em. That is my, what's the word? Philosophy? Motto, said Viga, then frowned. She was thirsty. She tapped at her breastbone with a finger, felt like the thirst was a thing alive under there, niggling and gnawing. Need a drink. You just drank, said Alex, hurrying to catch up again. You drank all the water we had. That was then. Viga didn't think about the past much. The past was nutshells. Once they're cracked off, what use are they? Toss 'em away and walk on. Why hoard the bastards? Also, her memory was poor, and digging up anything but the vaguest impressions further back than a week ago always felt like hard labour. Fucking yawn. She hadn't the patience for it. Never had any patience, even before the bite. Why worry about it, her mother used to tell her. Maybe while she was smiling and braiding Viga's hair. The thought made Viga smile. made her push her fingers into her hair, trying to remember what it had felt like. The tugging on her scalp, the being taken care of, the gulls calling on the dock and the smell of fish. Hadn't she been thinking she didn't think about the past much? Now here she was, thinking about the past again. Maybe she remembered all the time, then forgot she'd remembered. Viga frowned again. Now she'd got herself a bit confused. "You all right?" asked Alex. "Why wouldn't I be?" "Why have we stopped?" "Oh, right." Viga walked on. She liked walking. "What was I saying?" "You weren't saying anything." "Oh, right. Was I thinking something?" "How would I know that?" "Oh, right. Hot, isn't it?" "Not really." "Ah." Viga wiped sweat from that hollow at the base of her throat, always collected there for some reason. "I'm thirsty." "You said." "Did I? We should get water." "That's what we're doing." "Ah, hence the river. Good then, perfect. We should get a bucket." Alex raised her brows and rolled her eyes downwards, and Viga followed them. "Ah." She had a bucket in her hand. "Jacob gave it to us." "So he did. Jacob's a very practical man." He'd made sure to strip all the corpses back at the inn for coins and rings and what have you. So now they could buy food and blankets and things. Not that Viga needed blankets. She ran hot as Brocker and Atre's crucible. The weather wasn't made that could make her cold. She'd probably have wandered off and left that plunder. Jacob was good for thinking ahead, good on the details. Viga was terrible on the details, always had been, even before the bite. "You're terrible on the details, Viga," her mother used to say. "Good," she said. "Money smooths things out. Can't buy things without it. You get debts and whatnot." "Believe me, I know. Left a few debts behind me, in fact." "Need a piss." And Viga hitched up her stupid bloody cloak thing, took a step from the track, and squatted in the grass. Alex blinked. "You're just going to—" Viga was already wriggling her trousers down. "Course you are." Couple of pilgrims walking towards the river were staring over at her now. "Morning," called Viga, but they hurried on. "What's got up their arses?" "Couldn't say," muttered Alex, scratching the back of her head. "Maybe you—" "And there we go. Don't stand downhill of me, you'll be swept away into flood. Like when the sons of Bor slew Ymir. It's like a river in spate down here." "Yep." Alex squinted off at the horizon. "It's a real fountain. All that drinking surely paid off." "I knew it would." And Viga forced out a last dribble with a shiver, shook her ass, and pulled her trousers up and was off, leaving Alex hopping along behind. Why hang around? "You forgot the bucket." "Aye, but look, you've got it." And Viga clapped Alex on the back and near knocked her over and had to catch her shoulders to whisk her up straight again. The Pope said, "Look after Princess Alexia," and Viga loved the Pope. Such a laugh. They would chat about this and that. Viga was usually in a cage at the time, but she was in a cage most of the time and had to accept there were good reasons why. They understood each other. Both missed their mothers, maybe. Her Holiness said, "Look after Princess Alexia," so Viga had decided to like her. If you have to look after someone, what's the point in not liking them? Makes everything a pain in the arse. And life's painful enough without getting in your own way, as Halfdan always used to say. Before she killed him. Don't look too far ahead. That was what Olaf used to say. Before she killed him, too. Or did she kill him first? The order was hazy. Probably best not to look too far back, either. Especially if your memory was as poor as Viga's and had all the horrible shit in it hers had. Next breath, next step, next meal, next fuck. Get what you can from the moments, then let 'em go. Don't hoard your nutshells. Travel light, light as wind. Scrape off the mud of grudges and regrets. Stay clean. "Viga?" And Viga realized she'd stopped again, just standing there, staring at the dirt. "What? We shouldn't be," Alex glanced about, "drawing attention." "I cannot help that I'm a striking woman." "Jacob said—" "Jacob's all right," she said, striding on. "You can trust him, all the oaths and whatever. He's like a rock. Not much give, but he's a man who does what he says he'll do. Bloody past and blah blah, of course, but we're none of us along for our virtue. Except Brother What's-face, I suppose." "Diaz." "Is it? Priests like to be virtuous, or at least like to pretend to be, or at least like other people to pretend to be." She stopped to snarl the words. "Fuck that bastard Rickard, though. He has a fucking stink on him. Can you smell it? That evil stink he has. Dead and wrong and rotten old blood." She realized she was standing over Alex and spitting in her face, and took a step back and tried to smile, which was hard with that lumpy throbbing, that scratchy scratching under her breastbone. "But, you know, you can hate a shipmate and still row the same way." And she took the bucket from Alex's limp hand and set off again towards the river. Eric used to say that. Had she killed him? Or was he one of the ones that got away? Hard to remember now. It was all in a mist. Hints and whispers and bits and pieces. Take a breath and open your fist and let the mistakes fall out like nutshells and... there, you're clean. "After all, look at me. How many folk have I killed?" And she laughed and threw an arm around Alex's shoulders. "Boatloads. Imagine if you stacked them up into a hill, into a mountain. Blot out the sun." And she laughed again, but she could hear it cracking, like it might turn to a scream any moment. She'd a worry the wolf was awake, could feel its pitter-patter footsteps up and down inside the cage of her ribs, slinking and slobbering, whining to be let out. "What's the point of counting after a while? Once you're over your head in blood, what's the difference?" And she realized she had tears tickling her eyes, and she wiped them, then laughed again and made a better fist of it this time. You have to laugh it off. Nutshells. Pretend you're clean. Here was the riverbank, and trees in the sun on the far side, and light all a-sparkle on the water, with the little flies drifting in the chilly sunny morning, and Viga took a long sharp breath through the nose and let it sigh away, and things weren't too bad. Downstream, a ring of women had gathered in the shallows, all facing out in their wet shifts, while one or two of their number washed hidden from view in the middle. She nudged Alex with an elbow. "Look at these, I ask you. Didn't God make your twats?" she shouted at them. "He knows what's under there, and the rest of us can guess." She tossed the bucket down and started to wriggle out of her cloak thing. "I'll show 'em how it's done." "But everyone'll see, you know." Alex was peering at Viga's hands, and Viga turned them over and saw the marks on the backs. "Ah, the warnings." Hard to feel clean when they'd pricked her crimes into her, warned the world about her forever, chained her and goaded the wolf out with hot iron. She could feel it, snapping and scratching in the cage of her ribs, ever so niggly, ever so sharp. She squeezed her eyes shut and tried to get the breath in. It was gone and done and washed away. No need for regrets. She flapped her hands about a bit, put 'em where she didn't have to see the writing on the backs. "You all right?" asked Alex. Fine. I'm clean." "You're what?"
"Like nutshells."
"What?"
"Fucking nutshells!"
snarled Viga, spraying spit.
"Aren't you fucking listening?"
And she saw her hands were up, like they'd catch Alex and rip the meat out of her, and the hair on the tattooed backs of them, and the tendons standing stark, and shit, the points of claws popping her nails off, and she hid them behind her back, 'cause Alex looked very pale, and who could blame her?
"Sorry,"
said Viga.
"I am so sorry for shouting. How rude."
And she was sort of smiling and sort of crying at the same time.
"My mother would be very disappointed."
She touched Alex's cheek with her hand, and it was just a person hand with the nails a bit bitten down, and if you could look past the runes and what have you, actually very gentle. And Viga stroked Alex's hair and pulled a leaf out of it. She looked quite scared while Viga was doing it, but, oh well, at least one of them felt better.
"I like you, Alex,"
said Viga.
"Why?"
asked Alex, which sounded strange and almost a bit sad, but who knows why people say things.
"Don't know. You swear a lot, maybe. Here's the thing."
Viga tried to smile, but it was hard.
"A time may come when I tell you to run away from me."
She took a breath, but it felt like the wolf swelling in her chest hardly left room for it.
"And if I say run, you have to run. You hear me? Don't argue, don't didder. 'Cause the Pope's binding binds me, but not the wolf. Run away and maybe climb a tree, or ride away fast on a horse, or jump down a well." "Down a well?" "Yes, good idea."
Viga took another breath and got this one all the way in. The wolf was shrinking, shrivelling away.
"Phew!"
She scratched her neck and patted her breastbone and wriggled her shoulders.
"Fine, fine."
She took another breath.
"I'm clean."
Not far from the bank, a man was changing a wheel on a wagon, down beside it on one knee, pilgrim's hood back and hair dark with sweat, and his sleeves rolled up, sinews shifting in his forearms as he wrestled with the axle. You couldn't have called him pretty, but no one ever called Viga pretty, and it wasn't about pretty. What was it about? Always something different, never what you'd expect. Something in the way he knelt there so easy, the way he looked at the wheel to be changed, like it was the whole world. Something in that stillness, in that patience, and Viga felt the tickle, and she pressed her tongue into her teeth and made the growl in her throat and thought about going over, thought about how the tickle would become an itch and the itch would need scratching. Not the time nor the place, Jacob would say, but he was wrong. The place and time was here and now. It had to be. Claw what you can from the world while it's on offer, 'cause we're all meat, all dust, written on the sand, gone in a twinkle. You can't keep it for tomorrow, 'cause tomorrow your hopes won't all bloom of a sudden. Tomorrow will be just like today. Not the time, nor the place." She took one step towards the man changing the wheel and felt someone grab her wrist.
"Viga?
She stared around. She'd forgotten Alex was there. Took her a moment to remember who she was.
"Oh, right. Princess. Who'd have thought?"
"Not fucking me," said Alex, puffing out her cheeks.
"Where are you going?"
"Nowhere." Viga shook herself, shook the tickle off.
"Not the time, nor the place, is it? Ah, the river."
She loved a swim, always had, even before the bite, water in your hair and whatever. So she strode down the bank and slopped into the river in her clothes and felt the lovely chilly kiss of the water and drank it down and spat it out in a little fountain and laughed and splashed about and laughed again.
"The bucket!"
shouted Alex from the bank.
"The what?"
She did see a bucket floating away on the current. Someone must have dropped it. That was careless. She stood up in the river, water streaming off her sodden clothes. Now she was confused again.
"What was I saying?"
More about those dumplings.
"Dearest Mother, I fondly remember the long evenings we spent discussing the pilgrimage you took to the Basilica of St. Justine the Optimist, leaving me for 6 months in the care of your maid and groom. Imagine my delight many years later to find myself retracing your steps and accompanying no less a personage than that celebrated theologist and philanthropist, Bishop Apollonia of Acci. I confess the great figures I have recently encountered have not always measured up to their reputations, but I feel sure even you would admire Her Excellency. She strikes me as the very model of a servant of the Almighty, not only eloquently preaching, but stoically practicing all 12 virtues, and, dare I say, many more besides. On several occasions now she has asked me to contribute to her thrice daily improving lectures, delivered from the remarkable innovation of a portable pulpit. What a time to be alive! I pray to the Saviour and our own Saint Beatrix for the strength to follow the bishop's example, and fear I may need it in the days to come, for we have now reached Venice, and—
Brother Diaz paused, pen hovering over paper, and looked towards the city. The river flared out across the plain, splitting into 100 channels, flowing sluggishly about 1,000 islands, all encrusted with red roofs, stitched together by bridges of stately stone and ramshackle wood. He could just make out the crooked twigs of wharves at the swarming docks, the shifting forest made by the masts of moored ships, the pinprick spires of the many churches, the white spike of the campanile of St. Michael's. He could hear the city's voice when the salty wind shifted, a distant hum of commerce and industry over the outraged squawking of the gulls. Boats plied the wide lagoon, distant specks leaving streaks of wake on the blue water under the blue sky. He wondered what passengers they were carrying to what ports. Not princesses to Troy in the company of monsters, that was sure. He issued a long-suffering sigh, in through the nose and out through the mouth, the way his mother taught him. "That's Venice, then?" Princess Alexia stood above him at the top of the rise, hands on her hips, unremarkably coloured hair flicking about her pilgrim's hood in the breeze. "Unless we've lost our way entirely," he said, reflecting that he'd lost his way entirely. "Pretty. Surprisingly so, given her ill reputation. Guess things aren't always what they seem. I'm beginning to realize that." "Who's the letter to?" Brother Diaz wondered about lying, but he'd never been any good at it, even in his misspent youth when he'd been called on to do it all too often. "My mother. I confess I haven't shared all the details." "Doubt you'd be believed. Doubt anyone I know would believe it." And she snorted in a thoroughly unregal manner. "Princess Alexia." "You should write and give them the news." "No one wants to hear from me, even if they could read, even if I could write." "You never learned?" "Who'd teach me?" "I could." They blinked at each other, equally surprised by the offer. I was a librarian, after all, and someone who is to be, with any luck, Empress of Troy should probably know her letters." She frowned at him with her customary suspicion. "I'm here? You're here?" He glanced towards the track, where the candle holders that topped the portable pulpit were only now wobbling into view. "We have some time before the blessed company catches up. Why don't we make use of it?" With the watchful reluctance of a mouse approaching a trap, Alex perched on the rock beside him. He slid a sheet of paper from his satchel and handed her the pen. "Hold it loosely, resting on the middle finger, like so." "Exactly. Now dip it in the ink, not too deep. Good. Make a line at an angle. Yes, then another so they meet like a mountain. Don't worry, everyone spatters at first. Now a third line joining the two, halfway up, straight across like that. And there, you have formed the letter A, the first letter of your name, Alex." She looked at him, then at the paper, then snorted up a surprisingly girlish little giggle. "Easy as that?" "It isn't magic." "Feels like magic." She dipped pen in ink and tried again, tongue-tip pressed between her teeth with concentration, and Brother Diaz smiled. She looked very young suddenly, and very much in need of guidance, and he felt oddly pleased to be able to give it. He wondered when he last felt truly useful. He wondered if he ever had.
You couldn't keep your legs closed for one day?
There was no mistaking the most gravelly voice in all creation. Jacob of Thorn was limping over with Viga and Balthazar, a peculiar trio of pilgrims indeed.
I could not, answered Viga proudly. When the mood's on me, they spring apart. I've got desires and refuse to be shamed.
Brother Diaz shifted uncomfortably. God help him, he'd got desires too. Desires he had fondly imagined smothered in the tomb-like atmosphere of the monastery, but which turned out merely to have been throttled unconscious and were now starting to awaken, sharper than ever after their long torpor. Only last night he dreamed of something powerful and tattooed, and woken with a raging stiffness of the member.
One could more easily shame a gatepost, Balthazar was saying. Venice?
Venice. Alex handed Brother Diaz back the pen. What's happened?
Our werewolf has been...
Balthazar lifted the holy circumfix Brother Diaz wore around his neck and poked 2 fingers through it in a gesture more eloquent than any words.
Doing what werewolves do.
Again?
Asked Brother Diaz, snatching it back, clearly outraged and absolutely neither jealous nor aroused.
This,
Jacob rubbed wearily at the crooked bridge of his nose.
Person, you...
People.
Viga jerked her head down the track.
From the back. Lot more fun than these fools at the front.
Venice? Asked Baptiste, strolling up. She had the sleeves of her pilgrim's habit carelessly rolled to display a selection of dangling bracelets. Brother Diaz suspected she'd won them gambling, but wouldn't have been shocked had theft or murder played a role.
Venice.
Alex proudly held up the paper.
I wrote an A, and it's a beauty. What's Viga done?
What Viga does.
Again? Asked Baptiste, sounding impressed.
These people saw...
Jacob waved a hand at Viga, whose pilgrim's habit was far from fully fastened, displaying rune-covered collarbones and no small quantity of rune-covered chest into the bargain.
All this?
It wasn't dark, growled Viga, and all this makes an impression.
It was certainly making an impression on Brother Diaz's restless member. He was obliged to shift his satchel into his lap and avert his eyes lest it be noticed. Sadly, however, one cannot avert one's ears.
Let me tell you the story. Should Alex hear the story?
He asked somewhat shrilly, though in truth he was more worried about the danger to his own immortal soul.
How can one choose a life of virtue,
asked Baptiste, piously clasping her hands,
without understanding the alternative? I grew up on the streets, said Alex, waving him away. This won't shock me.
Viga cracked her tattooed knuckles.
Don't fucking count on it. So, the tall one caught my eye first, but I got a feeling about the short one. Morning, Brother Lopez. Your Excellency.
Brother Diaz jumped up, deeply grateful for the distraction, though he suspected his imagination would be filling in the details for the rest of the day regardless.
Pray dispense with the honorifics.
Bishop Apollonia flashed that humble smile Brother Diaz had determined to practice the moment he had access to a mirror.
They feel inappropriate at the cathedral in Achi, doubly so out here, where we are all siblings in faith, striving to save our souls. Fine words.
Brother Diaz drew the bishop away, fumbling his writing things back into his satchel and laughing awkwardly in a futile attempt to drown out Viga's rapidly progressing tale of sexual conquest.
As yours always are. I could say the same of yours, my son.
The bishop headed for the portable pulpit, which her guards were in the process of unhitching so the horses could graze beside the track.
I hoped you might help me lead our blessed company in midday prayers again. I had in mind the Saviour's exhortation on the 12 virtues. I only wish I could, today and every day, But it pains me to say I and my companions must leave the blessed company here, to step from the path to redemption and skulk off with the devils towards who knew what depths of depravity. Important, indeed vital, business calls us away. Try as we might, duty will find us out. You leave with my blessing." The bishop had an almost apologetic quirk to her brows. "All of you but one." "How do you mean?" "The Princess Alexia Pyrogenitus must come with me." Brother Diaz actually felt the colour drain from his face as he glanced towards Alex, who chose that unfortunate moment to give a splutter of high-pitched laughter. At least any stiffening of the member was swiftly put to rest. But isn't Princess?" The bishop sighed. "Must we?" Brother Diaz realized her 6 well-armed guards were all close by. Closing in, one might almost have said. "Your Excellency, plain Bishop Apollonia, please. I beg you." And Brother Diaz held up a calming hand as he backed towards the others. That same calming hand which had so utterly failed to prevent a massacre at the inn. "In the name of the Saviour, can we not avoid violence?" "I am giving you the chance to do exactly that, Brother Lopez," said the bishop mildly. "Or should I say Diaz?" "Oh, God," he murmured. He was starting to think he might not be the best judge of character.
"What's happening?"
asked Jacob, frowning over. "Bishop Apollonia would like Alex to stay with her." There was a pregnant silence. Viga straightened, eyes narrowing. Alex paled, eyes widening. Most people would have perceived no change in Jacob of Thorn's flinty features, but having known the man for several of the least pleasant weeks of his life, Brother Diaz was sensitive to the tiny adjustments in his frown that bespoke deep displeasure.
"That will not be happening."
And he eased back his habit to reveal the battered pommel of his sword. "I fear I must insist," said the bishop, and her guards lowered spears, put gauntleted hands on hilts, in one case levelled a wicked-looking crossbow. Most likely no crossbows look nice when they're pointed right at you. "Please!" Brother Diaz tried raising the other hand, as if his own empty palms might somehow prevent everyone else from filling theirs with ironware. "My companions are very dangerous people." "I have some dangerous people of my own," said Bishop Apollonia. Perhaps a dozen denizens of the rear section of their company were closing in from the other direction, as slouched and ragged as the bishop's men were polished and upright. Among them were the moneylender, 3 pimps, and a fellow with a big facial boil, who earned a living chopping wood for the evening fires. At the fore were 2 of the moneylender's thugs, one very tall and the other exceedingly short. "Ah!" Viga grinned over at them. "Back for seconds?" "I reckon it's a different kind of rough and tumble they've come for," said Baptiste. "You should know that a very great reward has been offered," said Her Excellency, "by Duke Constans of Troy." "One of my fucking cousins," muttered Alex, peering out from behind Viga's arm. "Money?" Brother Diaz could only stare at the bishop, a woman who, until a few moments before, he had thought destined for future sainthood. "Where is your faith?" "Gold might not follow one to heaven," and Bishop Apollonia nodded to the rogues spreading out around them, "but it can make a very great difference to these gentlemen while yet on earth. My own motives are not so base, of course. Duke Constans has promised me relics of the highest order, currently held in the Basilica of the Angelic Visitation in Troy. A fragment from the wheel on which our Saviour died, a scrap from her robe, and a lock of her hair." She put a hand to the holy circle on her breast, looking to heaven with pious self-satisfaction. "Relics that will bring glory to our beloved church." "Not to mention their custodian," breathed Brother Diaz. that might see her to a cardinal's chair, perhaps? Or can it be that your ambitions reach higher yet?"
Bishop Apollonia did not even have the decency to look guilty.
"Setting our corrupted church back on the righteous path is worth any sacrifice."
She turned her scorn on Alex.
"And do you really believe you can install this ferrety creature on the throne of the East?"
"Ferrety?" snapped Alex.
"Hand her over now, and you can all just go home."
Brother Diaz stood with his mouth open.
To just go home.
Ever since leaving the holy city, that was everything he had wanted. Perhaps it was because he wanted so much to accept it that the offer made him so utterly furious.
"And to think," he breathed, "I saw in you the model of what a priest should be. I praised you in a letter to my mother. What a fraud you proved to be. What a penny hypocrite. Rather than prating from your moving pulpit in the vanguard of our sacred company, you should have been bringing up the rear with the rest of the whores."
"Ouch," said Viga with a snort.
"We have been entrusted with a sacred mission by Her Holiness." "Her Holiness?"
Bishop Apollonia's lip curled.
"Cardinal Bock has stuffed an infant into the throne of St. Simon. Your ilk have made of our holy church a laughingstock, and of the celestial palace a shameful sty. Better to have a piglet for a pope." "How dare you!" bellowed Brother Diaz. "Her Holiness may be
inexperienced," offered Baptiste.
"But she is the mother of the church."
An odd phrase applied to a 10-year-old, but the thought only threw fuel on the fire of his righteous fury.
"She doesn't suit you. The arrogance, the insolence, the self-serving hubris. Bishop, cardinal, or king of fucking Araby, you don't get to choose a pope."
He stabbed at the sky with a finger.
"That choice is for God."
"Think Brother Diaz found his balls," murmured Viga.
"The thing about God, my son," sneered Bishop Apollonia, "is that he often needs a nudge in the right direction."
"Brothers and sisters," she called, turning towards the track. Caught up in his sermonizing, Brother Diaz had failed to notice that many of the richer members of the fellowship had reached them and were drifting over to see what the shouting was about.
"There are monsters among us."
The bishop's voice rang out as clearly as the bell for midday prayers, her accusing finger outstretched. Brother Diaz was not the only one who could work himself up into a righteous fury, it seemed. In fact, he was nowhere near the best at it.
"Heretics and heathens, recreants and recusants."
"She's not exactly wrong," murmured Baptiste, sliding one hand into her habit and the other behind her back.
One of the portrait carriers set down his painting and produced a stick. It was a large stick with a distinct knobble on the end.
"We're very fine people,"
ventured Brother Diaz, but as he looked across the scarred, tattooed, and ferrety faces of his companions, his conviction ebbed away like holy water from a broken font.
"The best people."
More of the company was filtering up to join what was steadily taking on the character of a mob, pressing in on three sides, grumbling and jostling. Brother Diaz saw an old woman he'd been cheerfully discussing footwear with that morning pick up a rock.
"Here's a pickle,"
muttered Jacob. The chapel of the Holy Expediency had formed a little knot facing outwards, with Princess Alexia at the centre. Balthazar and Baptiste were pressed shoulder to shoulder, which, given how much they despised each other, didn't seem a good sign.
"They are malefactors and fugitives,"
called Her Excellency, and the crowd edged in.
"It is every pilgrim's duty to bring them to the righteous justice of our Mother Church."
"Take another step, and I will make ashes of you,"
and Balthazar whipped something from his habit.
"Ah!"
Brother Diaz took a horrified step away, realized that took him towards the bishop's guards, and was obliged to step the other way, realized that took him almost into Viga's arms, and was obliged to sidle awkwardly around her. Balthazar had produced what appeared to be a severed hand, the skin mottled and the nails black. "Where'd you get that?" asked Viga, no more than curious. "From a sorceress who no longer needed it." Balthazar waved it towards the pilgrims like a torch at wolves, and it jerked horribly into life, fingers wriggling. "Ah!" said Brother Diaz, and Alex, at the same time, shrinking back against each other. A little flame puffed from the blackened fingertips, and there was a strong odour of sulphur.
"Sweet Saviour!"
whispered one of the pilgrims, making the sign of the circle over her heart.
"He's a sorcerer!"
A round of gasps, curses, angry jeers. "Magician! God damn it!" snarled Balthazar. Viga had begun to growl in the back of her throat as poorer pilgrims shuffled up to join the rest, first curious, then furious, the anger spreading from the bishop like a plague.
"Witness!"
she thundered.
"Do you need any further proof of the debasement of our holy church? Cardinal Buck has laid down with monsters."
"You want monsters?" Viga ripped her habit off and flung it aside, crouching in her vest with her fists clenched and muscle popping from her tattooed arms.
"I'll show you, monsters! Take the girl alive, but I'll—"
The bishop's head was wrenched back by the hair, and Sonny stepped from nowhere, pressing the curved blade of a dagger into her throat. There was a moment of breathless silence, the pulse thudding almost painfully hard in Brother Diaz's head, the air heavy with the promise of violence.
"What's your plan here, Sonny?"
murmured Jacob.
"Hadn't got to that,"
she murmured back.
"An elf!"
someone screamed.
"A fucking elf!" "Drop the knife!"
squawked the chief of Her Excellency's guards, waving his crossbow around in a frankly dangerous manner. Baptiste's eyes darted from one of the thugs to another as they closed in, her hands sliding from her habit with the telltale gleam of steel.
"Kill it!"
screeched one of the pilgrims, pointing at Sonny.
"Wait!"
gasped the bishop as Sonny's knife pressed into her throat.
"Wait!"
A mild-mannered shoemaker, who'd been hoping for a cure for his piles, prepared to use a holy circle on a pole as a bludgeon.
"Oh, God,"
whispered Alex, clutching tight to Brother Diaz's sleeve.
"Oh, God,"
whispered Brother Diaz, clutching tight to hers. The pimps, the guards, the pilgrims all edged forwards. Jacob eased an inch of steel from his scabbard.
"Who's got the good meat?"
hissed Viga, drool spilling from her lips as they twisted back from lengthening fangs. Brother Diaz shut his eyes and turned his face away.
"Your attention, please, everyone."
He looked around. He couldn't help it. The prayers died on his lips, and his mouth dropped foolishly open. A figure stood in the portable pulpit, hands gripping the lectern. A handsome man in his late 50s, a man of astonishing dignity and presence, a man from whom no one could for a moment tear their wondering eyes away.
"My name is Baron Ricard,"
he said, placing a humble palm on his breast.
"I have been with you on the road since we gathered near Spoleto."
"He has!"
gasped one of the pimps, and a hatchet dropped from his limp hand as he raised it to point.
"I recognize him!"
"I was not born a nobleman."
Ricard's voice overflowed with quiet authority and rich compassion.
"The position was in some ways thrust upon me by my wife, Lucretia, a woman it was very hard to say no to."
"What's he doing?" muttered Alex.
"Hush!"
snapped Brother Diaz. He couldn't afford to miss a breath of this. He knew these were the most important words he would ever hear. The pilgrims had turned as one, attending more closely than they ever had to the bishop's sermons.
"When she first brought me to Krosno, I was So naive. Frankly, I was no better than a pretty idiot. Perhaps I am unfair. A very pretty idiot. I think it was late spring, maybe early summer.
The Baron frowned, scratching his neck.
No, mid-spring, definitely. I remember the trees were coming into leaf.
My God,
breathed Brother Diaz. The revelation burst upon him, a mind-expanding epiphany. If the trees had been coming into leaf, that would have been mid-spring. Bishop Apollonia was similarly moved.
trees in a leaf.
Tears ran freely down her cheeks. Sunny took the blade from her throat and stepped back. No one even seemed to notice, so transported were they by the oration. One of the portraits fell from nerveless fingers and splashed into a puddle.
Though a lot of evergreens also in that part of Poland, of course, sometimes referred to as the Garden of Eastern Europe. Perhaps you would like to put down your weapons while I talk?
There was a clattering as guards, thugs, and pilgrims instantly divested themselves of swords, spears, axes, and knives. One pimp hopped around as he struggled to tug a dagger from his boot. People began to fall to their knees as the Baron's awe-inspiring address continued.
Lucretia's castle was a bit of a pile, if I'm honest. Been in the family for generations. That wallpaper in the dining room, ugh! And I was set on bringing the place up to scratch. A bit of plastering, new paint, the roofs were in need of attention, but there's a certain kind of slate they use that has to be shipped in. Then there was a whole to-do over a new chandelier. The people there are exceptionally set in their ways.
Someone was pulling at Brother Diaz's shoulder, hissing,
"Let's go,"
in a gravelly voice, but he tore free. He understood now how it must have felt to hear the Saviour speak. Baron Rickard was close to touching the very secret of existence. Everyone there knew it. One woman, a coal merchant from Grosseto, was making a whimper of almost sexual ecstasy with every breath.
My favourite food had been a stew of beans and sausage my father made with goose fat, but it soon became the dumplings local to my wife's estates.
The Baron's eyes were fixed on the far horizon, fixed beyond the banal and everyday, fixed upon a divine revelation he was somehow moulding into earthly words.
Pork, I believe, done with a little oil, some onion. Those were the days.
He gave a sad smile that cut right to the heart and left Brother Diaz breathless.
When I still chewed things.
"Merciful heaven, it's true,"
whispered the moneylender, hands clasped.
"It is the truth."
One of the pimps had wet himself, standing transfixed, while a dark stain spread across the front of his trousers.
"The only truth."
Brother Diaz understood. What did it matter? What did anything matter but to hear Baron Rickard's next words?
"So, everyone, if I have your absolute attention."
The vampire scanned the gathering to make sure all eyes were turned towards him, and they were, unerringly, in awestruck reverence.
"And I believe I do. Coming to my point."
His beard had turned white, and his hair had turned white, and his face looked very lined. But those eyes! It was as if he stared directly into Brother Diaz's soul. There was utter silence. Even the birds and the insects were still.
"You will continue to Cyprus, forgetting this speech, forgetting me, definitely forgetting the elf and any suggestion of sorcery, forgetting that any person such as I or my associates, or anyone faintly resembling a princess, even a fairy one, were ever members of your blessed company. Yes?"
There was a kind of wave through what had recently been a bloodthirsty mob as every person eagerly nodded their heads.
"Yes,"
gasped the coal merchant, eyelids fluttering.
Yes, yes, yes.
I wish you joy of the journey, said the Baron. May you all find what you are looking for. He turned away, then turned back. Apart from you, Bishop Apollonia.
Me?
Asked the bishop, tears still streaming down her face.
You will experience a frustrating itch that you cannot quite reach, all the way to Cyprus and back.
I will,
said the bishop, and she dropped on her knees in the mud and raised her hands joyously to the heavens.
God love me, I will.
Thank you, everyone. And the Baron clambered down, a difficult undertaking at his advanced age, knotted knuckles wobbling on the handle of his cane. And so they left the blessed company behind, most of them still staring at the empty pulpit, others gazing blankly about, still others wandering off directionless. Brother Diaz allowed himself to be steered away, stumbling down the long slope towards Venice, into the dappled shade of the trees, most of his mind still lost in the sublime wonders of the Baron's address.